everybody. It's Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. Thanks for being with us on this July afternoon. I am joined by Kimaya Dixit and Tim Lewis, Hattaway Communications. And popping up on your screen just now, you should be seeing a brand new tool that we made with the help of our friends at Hattaway and the good folks at the Rockefeller Foundation. We're calling it Storytelling for Good, and you can get to it if you're not already there at storytelling.com, network.org, but you don't need to dial away just yet. We're actually going to walk you through this site over the course of our time together today. And then on some subsequent webinars we'll be hosting across the span of this year, we'll be taking you into sort of a deep dive on some of the big pillars of storytelling on sort of a broader, more conceptual level, along with some practical, tactical stuff. But for today, we're aiming to show you how this website works and how you can use it to best effect to build a storytelling culture inside your own organization. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Kimaya, and we will get underway. We'll take your questions along the way. So I should actually flag that as well. If you'd like to ask a question and you've not been on this webinar technology before, if you look down into your lower left-hand corner, you see a little chat box there. Just type in your questions. I'll be keeping an eye on them. And along the way, when it seems appropriate, if there's a burning question, raise your hand, put it in there, and we'll pause and we'll take your questions so we can make sure that we show everyone what they need to know in order to move ahead. All right, Kimaya, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Sean. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'm going to start by giving you some background on Storytelling for Good and just quickly how we got here. So I've been a part of this platform before it was even a platform. So about 4 years ago, we started doing some research in the social impact sector to understand what it is that they want when it comes to storytelling. So based on that research, we came up with 4 pillars, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these 4 pillars. And the entire site, which we'll walk you through, is based on these 4 pillars. So Tristan, if you can scroll down to the section, yes, that shows the 4 pillars. Great, thank you.
Oh, this is where I pause everybody and let you know, Kimaya, Tristan, and I are all sitting together in a conference room, and so our good friend Tristan Mahabir is driving what you're seeing. So if you hear us giving directions, that's what you're listening to.
So first we have the strategy section, and this pillar is super important because here is where we start thinking about your audiences and their objectives, the purpose of your organization, or your big picture story, and also the narrative framework, as we call it. And this is really important because it sets the groundwork for all of your storytelling efforts moving forward. So usually we recommend that people start their storytelling journey with the strategy pillar in mind. And then we move on to content, which is the next pillar. And this is really where all the action happens, because here we have tools specifically based on how you can craft compelling stories that can capture your audience's imaginations. So Tim will talk a little bit more about it later, but we have a very important tool here, which is called the Social Impact Story Map. And it's a great tool to develop outlines for your stories as you move forward. Next, we have the engagement section. So as we were doing the research, one common question kept coming up, that we have our stories, but we don't really know what to do with them. So can you help us with that?
Can I interrupt here?
Yes.
So when you were doing research,
yeah,
you didn't just walk out and go, stories. What's up with that? What did you guys actually do? What were the questions you were asking, and who were you asking those questions of?
Yeah, so we started this research 4 years ago with thought leaders in the storytelling space. So this was across sectors. It included communications agencies, nonprofits, government agencies, social networks like people from Facebook, Tumblr. So we wanted to get a cross-cutting understanding about what were some of the challenges that people were facing when it comes to writing stories, thinking about stories, and distributing stories. And
I'm assuming you found that there were problems.
There were a lot of problems, yes.
Okay.
And one of the biggest problems was that people see storytelling as super complex, and they just don't know where to start, because storytelling to people is just, I cannot do this. I'm one person doing communications for a small organization. I don't know where to start. So that's where the strategy piece came, that you need to start with the audiences.
Now, you'd spent a lot of time doing research. I mean, were you surprised that people because we're all storytellers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I try to every day tease out of my 8-year-old what happened with your day today, right? And maybe I get a story, maybe I don't.
Yep.
But presumably if you're working in a comm shop or you're working at Facebook or these other places, you should be thinking of yourself as a professional storyteller. And you're telling me that's kind of not the case?
But that's not. And a lot of people don't think of themselves as storytellers, which is a problem. A lot of communications folks also are just doing so many different things that they don't see storytelling as being something easy. They want the stories, and then they kind of want to take the content from the stories to share it and distribute it. But no one really knows this full process from strategy to evaluation to content to engagement.
Or if they do, it's sort of intuitive, but they've never thought about it in a formal way. They don't have that map. So Jeffrey, and by the way, guys, jump in and ask questions. Jeffrey has a great question, which is, Kimaya, did you guys publish your research or make it accessible in any way?
Yeah. It's actually on Rockefeller's website. It's called the Digital Storytelling Report. And after this, we can send over a link to that if that's helpful.
And we'll put it up on Yabby if you're on the line. For everyone, our colleague Yabby Ferris is on Twitter, and you can also join the conversation there if you want to, since you have multiple browsers open. If you go to the hashtag ComNetLive, it's ComNetLive, and maybe Yabby can grab that report and post it up there, and we'll share it out. And we'll make a point of putting it up in the next newsletter. All right, I'm sorry. So you found everybody, number one, there was sort of a deficit around people thinking, I'm a storyteller. And then number two, no clear idea of kind of how to get from here to there. Yep. And that's ultimately what was sort of the foundation for building this website. Is that right?
Yeah. Another challenge that people voiced a lot is that they're unable to make the case for storytelling to senior management. So they need a framework. They need something that they can show that this actually has a foundation. This is not just something we're making up. So this website almost gives them credibility to speak about storytelling.
Did they offer up, and I'm sure this is probably in the report, but did they offer up any sense of why there was resistance? My guess is some of the folks on the call here today are having this experience themselves, and there's always a little bit of misery loves company. So what were some of the things people were experiencing?
The big one was senior management, as they put it, just didn't think that there was room for investment into storytelling. And when you think about storytelling, often people thought that this has to be video productions and this has to be, big things that include technology and not just, no one thought of a tweet as a story. No one thought of a picture as a story. So helping people understand that storytelling has different forms and formats was super important.
And how powerful it is, right? I mean, the truth is we live our lives in stories and their impact. And I think we shared this out when we sent out the message about announcing storytelling for goodness. Amazon has actually banned PowerPoint and bullets from being used in all their presentations. They require a narrative form for any new idea or piece of business that's going before the executive team.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so they're a little ahead of us.
Yeah. Another thing, too, there is that here is where the evaluation piece is really important, because you need some data and you need some evidence to show that your stories are working. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to.
How do you do that, right? Because I think of when you think of storytelling evaluation, I would think of going to the movies, where you might go to the movies and see the new Star Wars movie. You like it, you don't like it. The evaluation is how did it go? How did it do at the box office? Or what were the reviews? How did it do on Rotten Tomatoes? Lots of evaluation out there. Is there a similar sort of thing for the kinds of stories we're all aiming to tell, stories for good?
I mean, there's different types of research that we can do. The simplest and the most easiest is based on your social networks, so tracking your insights on that, your website. But then there's also other things that we can do, like surveys and asking people questions. So a lot more qualitative research is what we can do. This is also a piece in the website that we're all working on, and in the coming months, we hope to put out more content that will help people think through evaluation.
Oh, yeah. This is where I do a quick little proviso, folks, or just to let you know. We are hoping that the site is perfect, but we know whenever you launch any kind of piece of digital technology, there's always a glitch or two. So if and as you see them, please let us know. Just shoot us an email and know that we were going to be constantly updating, not constantly, but we will be updating the site and enhancing it along the way, particularly if and as you tell us about what you're interested in. So you can use the chat box to do that too. If you had a chance to play around a little bit and you have a question, see something that seems to be lacking, let us know. All right, I'm sorry, Kimaya, go right ahead.
And also, just to give you a little bit of background on Tim, he went to film school in Hollywood, so he's your person to talk about when it comes to crafting stories. I'm more of the research side of it and the engagement piece, and he's really the one who knows how to build these compelling stories. So any questions you have, you should also direct them to him. All
right, so these 4 things that we're seeing on the screen right now, strategy, content, engagement, and evaluation, these are actually online lessons that you can take through the site, but we're not going to show you those yet. We're going to have you wait a little minute. Tim's going to take us through that in a minute. You're going to take us back up. Tristan, if you don't mind driving back up to the top of the page, you're going to take us through lessons and Explore just to show us how that works.
So let's go to Explore first and go to Guides. So just really quickly, there are 2 sections in this website. One is the lessons section that Tim will talk about. It's interactive lessons that you can use. And then the Explore section is where we have all of our articles. So let's go to the Guides section. And you will see here that we have about 17 guides on some of the most widely used social networks. So this ranges from LinkedIn to Medium to Facebook to Twitter, and this is just to name a few. And these guides have a lot of tips and techniques and tricks that you can use to elevate your storytelling.
Can we crack one open? I know we're not going to spend too much time in here, but just continue to mind maybe.
Let's do Instagram.
Yeah, anybody want to pick one in the crowd here? Otherwise, we're going to pick Instagram. Medium. Okay, Savannah, we will go to Medium next. We're going to start with Instagram, then we'll go to Medium. Other votes. Medium. Mariel wants Medium too. Okay. Medium's next. Oh, we're on Medium. Okay. Oh, you're on Medium.
Yeah,
okay. We're going to go to Instagram. Okay. And then we'll do Medium.
All right. So this is really, the idea behind this was to create guides that were almost one-on-one so people could understand where to get started.
And maybe this is a place to pause real quick. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep interrupting you.
That's good.
But who's this for? This site is not just for like the person running the comm shop. In fact, you don't have to have communications in your title, right? We designed this with the idea that maybe this is your board chair.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a program person. Maybe this is somebody out on the front lines. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So this site, like you said, Sean, we wanted to be open and inviting to everyone, even people who don't know anything about storytelling, which is why some of this stuff might seem a little bit simplified, but it's just so everyone can access it easily. So Instagram, we have a couple of sections, as you'll see. What does Instagram do? Who does Instagram reach? This helps with understanding if your audiences are on Instagram. What do you need to use Instagram? So you'll see some of these are really basic questions, but they're very useful when someone has never used Instagram before and it seems daunting to them. So we want to break it down and we want to make everyone a storyteller because they have the ability with their phones to be storytellers now.
Right.
So this is kind of the purpose of these guides is to help people understand how to use the different platforms that are out there.
And these are actually printer friendly. Like, so you could take these, and we want you to print them out, share them. And this is the kind of thing where you could even use this as sort of a baseline or pull some of the content off and use it to make some slides and do a lunch and learn in your organization.
They're also helpful for program staff because a lot of the times they're on the front lines and they need to know how to capture stories or how to share stories. So these are easy ways that you can show them that here, you can use Instagram too. And a lot of organizations have been doing that.
Cool. All right. What else should we be looking at on Instagram, or do we want to move to Medium?
We should probably move to Medium, but it kind of has the same format throughout. So it's tips and tricks and limitations of the platforms and who tends to be using these platforms is how I would summarize it.
I love that we did this. I think this is just the coolest thing. Because I think these are questions we all have, or even more importantly, sometimes the people we work for, we answer to. These are questions that they have.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lord knows the world's going by us 1,000 miles an hour. Having a resource like this is really great.
And Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we plan on keeping these updated because technology is changing all the time, and it's really important to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I'm assuming at some point we'll have something that supplants Facebook. With all due respect to our friend the Sam Zuckerberg initiative, but that may happen someday. So yes, we are aiming to keep these as updated as we possibly can.
Are we going to Medium?
Yep, we're on Medium.
All right. I mean, you'll see it's kind of the same structure about what does it do, who does Medium reach, again, audiences, what do you need, and just breaking down the different strengths and limitations of the platform so you understand what you're getting into when you're thinking about using Medium. And this is also really helpful because platforms like Medium and Tumblr and a few others, people are not really using but kind of want to think about using them. And this is a good place for them to go and assess if it's right for their organization and their stories.
Right. Yeah, we're not endorsing these. These aren't things you have to do. In fact, I think what we're trying to suggest to you is to be really strategic. Think a little bit.
Learn a little bit. 17 platforms.
Oh, yeah, by all means. You will go crazy pretty darn quickly.
Yep. Yeah, so I think the engagement section hopefully will help you figure out which platforms are best for you, and then you can use those. And you can always experiment with different platforms and, take a trial and error method. But, don't go out on all 17 at the same time.
And I'll do a shameless plug here. A couple of years ago, Tristan and the good folks at the Case Foundation published a piece in our Change Agent Journal about social media and about the decisions the folks at the Case Foundation made on which platforms to use and which not to use. And again, maybe Yabby can find that and post that up on Twitter. I think it's called Follow the Yellow Brick Road to Your Social Media. I can't remember the rest of it. Anyway, suffice to say, we'll put that up on Twitter for everybody.
I like the title.
Yeah, Follow the Yellow Brick Road. It's a beautiful design. It was a really cool article, so you should be able to see that soon. All right, so these are, and just to be clear, most of the guys follow basically this form and function. So you can click on these at your leisure. And you can also see up at the top there's ways to search to see what you're trying to achieve. So we're trying to help you guys figure out to steer you in the right direction, but feel free to go ahead and play. That's probably going to be the most useful way to explore this section.
And some of the guides are also on how can you measure impact on the platform. So evaluation, it gets you started there. So if you're thinking about evaluation or you have questions and concerns, I would say you should start there.
Jane has a great question, if I can interrupt real quick. Jane Schmidt asks, how are you addressing audiences so it's not a one-size-fits-all? Because I know actually just yesterday, your colleague Doug, we had a webinar where we talked a little bit about if you're going to be driving narratives, one of the things we know is that, and I'm sure you've been integral in doing a lot of this research with American Aspirations, we've got to figure out who we're talking to and make sure that we're appealing to them in a values-based way, in a way that is going to get them to hear us and then potentially to act, right?
I will throw this question to Tim because he's the core part of the American Aspirations team and does a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tim, how do we make sure we're not?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Really
Sorry, Tim's not in the room with us.
And we've been doing a lot of research around understanding audiences, particularly in America, and what their hopes and values are and how to communicate to those folks. And there's a lot of information along those lines available on our website, AmericanAspirations.com. But I'll say that there's some basic things that you can do to sort of understand who is using which platform. You can, based on where you have the most followers, you can probably start doing some basic, you can have a basic understanding of what they're interested in engaging with. So if you have a lot of followers on Instagram, there's a particular type of content that they're going to be eager to consume, and it's slightly different on Facebook and very different on Twitter. So even just tracking those basic, something as basic as where most people are can really help you develop that content. But digging down into a little bit deeper in terms of what types of people make up your audience, that's something that sometimes takes a little more research. And on the American Aspirations website, and through that research that we're doing there, we're doing a lot of work to try to understand how you identify people based on their hopes and values and how you can sort of speak to them where they're at in terms of those characteristics. But then the next part of that is to really figure out what parts of your audience are comprised of what audience personas, right? So it's a little bit of a complicated thing that we're still doing some work to figure out ourselves. But the very basic answer is, depending on where your followers are, you can learn a lot about what type of content they want to engage with.
Yeah, and Jane, just to be really plain, this is Sean. We did not do psychographic research as part of this storytelling platform. We really are trying to sit at the kind of the 50,000-foot level and say, here's what the basic pillars of storytelling are, and I know Kimaya is going to take us through that, and Tim will do it in a little bit more detail in a quick minute. And then here's some of the distribution tools that you can use. And there's then a cut below that, which is trying to really understand who your audience is that goes beyond demographics. There's a ton of science and research behind that. It's just not something that we were able to do with this platform, although we obviously would highly encourage all of you to bring that into your practice if you can.
And one of the reasons is because there cannot be a one-size-fits-all strategy when it comes to audiences. So we just couldn't, on this website, address all of the different audiences that might be out there and your purpose for them. But there are some helpful, I think, best practices and articles in the Explore section on how to engage your audiences, how to figure out who your audiences are. So I would recommend just browsing through.
Is that a good segue to maybe go check out the Explore section?
Yeah. Let's go to articles, Tristan. Yeah, so here you will see that we have different articles by thought leaders in the storytelling space. There's so much variety here on different types of things that people need to know when it comes to storytelling. We also have case studies here on things that other organizations have done that have worked well. And then finally, we have some shorter tips for different platforms as well. So I don't even know how many articles we have here, maybe like 50 plus. So there's 7 at least. Yeah, there's a lot. So I would recommend looking through those. And at the top, you can filter by theme and topic.
Yeah, Tristan, you want to show them that? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so if you want articles specific to photography, click on photography and you will get some articles that are relevant to that. Any questions on this, Sean?
No, I'm a bit of a fanboy. I'm so proud we're doing this, but I just think this is incredibly cool and valuable. And guys, we're trying to kind of anticipate a lot of the questions or ways that you might use it, but we're also humble enough to know that you're going to teach us too, that there'll be things you find that we're lacking here. And so if you can raise your hand or send us a note and say, gosh, I really wish there was a fill in the blank, we'll try to make it if we can.
And we plan on keeping the content coming in this website, right? New articles will be published periodically.
Yeah, and almost all of Tristan's going to punch me in a quick second for saying this, but we just did the storytelling issue of Change Agent, and so most of those articles, you can find them online, but we'll be importing them over onto this site as well, so you can find them here. Do you want to click into one of these maybe? Just so folks can get a flavor of what these are like. Let's go to Eric's piece, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see here this article. I mean, I haven't written it, so I haven't read it in a long time, but it's about how to create a multimedia story. So it's a lot about, storyboards and choosing the right media, and a lot of different articles are just like this. It's a lot of practical information and tips that you can start using immediately, and
the way I think about these is it tends to be either case studies, so sort of real-world tested, here's what I did trying to tell stories, and either here's what worked and here's what didn't, or here's some best practices or some ideas if you were considering, or if you're doing it and just want to see if the work that you're doing is aligned with sort of what others in the field are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then these links, I think, are just great. There's so many other resources available there down at the bottom.
I think this was also one of the initial ideas for the website that people said when it comes to storytelling, everything is just dispersed all over the place. They don't know where to go. Yeah. So we're trying to get all the resources or relevant resources in one place so people don't have to keep searching for it and they have kind of a one-stop shop for this.
Yeah, and I would just tell you guys, I mean, this, as you can see, there are layers and layers and layers to this. This is a rabbit hole for sure. We would really encourage you to just take a look at this. There's a lot of really tremendous stuff, not only on this site, but then linked to it where we found other good, useful information. All right. Why don't we, maybe this is a good place to turn it over to Tim to take us through the lessons. All right, Mr. Tim, do you mind terribly?
I do not at all. We can go ahead and, Tristan, if you just want to scroll over the lessons tab, you can see, we just hold there for a second. What I want to do is take a few moments to give you a little more detail on each of the pillars of this platform. And as Sean and Kimaya have both said, we'll go into greater detail with each of them in the webinars that are scheduled in the coming months. So this portion of today's presentation will serve as a sort of a primer for how you can use them now, and a teaser for what's to come, what you might learn more about later in the year. In our work, we rely on social psychology and cognitive science a lot. And what the science tells us is that the story has the power when it comes to communicating. Or as we like to say, we're hardwired to see the world through stories, and you all know that. That's why you're interested in this platform, and it's what you're doing in your work in your everyday lives, as it is. We're all, performing these little reality shows all day long on Instagram and wherever else. Some of us probably participating a little more than others in that game. But when we think about it, we say strategic storytelling because we really want to achieve real and meaningful change in a broad way. And stories that do that are strategically conceived, they're creatively executed, and they're attached to measurable outcomes. And that's sort of, these 4 pillars speak to that process. So if you want to go ahead and click on strategy, Tristan, we can peek in there and see what's going on. And these lessons are designed for you to begin wherever you think makes the most sense based on your needs or the particular project that you're working on. But if you're starting from scratch or if you're really trying to educate yourself, we recommend starting with strategy. And if you scroll down a little bit to the creating your narrative section, this is one of the most important first steps in storytelling, which is being really clear about the broader narrative about your organization and your work. And this tool that we rely on in our own work and that we're turning over to you is a really great way to do that. So the narrative framework helps you think through that narrative, and it puts people at the center of whatever it is that you're working on. So that's where you'll see, number 1, the people most affected by your cause. And across the way at number 2, their goals, your audience's hopes for their lives. And then the problem that really stands in the way, or problems that stand in the way of helping them achieve those long-term goals. And then centered at the top, that's your solutions, the concrete, tangible ways your organization addresses those problems to improve people's lives, followed by the call to action, which is we say that creates a sense of urgency and purpose that people need to do something. You might not always have a particular task that you need them to do right away, but either way, you need to create a sense of urgency around whatever it is that you're proposing. So this is a really essential tool to this lesson, to the strategy pillar. And then down below it, you can see some of the key lessons. If you can just scroll down a little bit, Tristan. So there's a few lessons here that help walk you through each of those sections of the narrative to understand, and you'll see questions about each and every level that help you answer those points. What are the goals? Who are the people that we're talking about, and who are the people that we're targeting? And so you can sort of start collecting all of those materials to build that narrative.
Should we click into one of these, Tim? Would that be helpful just to show folks? I'm guessing maybe people played a little bit in the sandbox. But
yeah, this is great. So again, if you scroll down, you can see it highlights what section we're talking about in the narrative, and you can you'll see we're going to prompt you with a question to be answered, and there's a place for you to type in and fill that out. And then we're offering you examples along the way. So right at the top, we're going to give you an example of, based on some education work that we've done with motivating young people to complete their high school education. So you've got an example, and then we're going to walk you through step by step what you can do to start getting that raw material to put together your narrative. And you can see right there's a tip for each of those. Yes, and again, continuing beyond just the people that you're trying to reach, the people that you work with, and really identifying what problems they're trying to overcome. And this will help you prioritize too, if you really get a good sense of all the people that you're trying to communicate with, and then really understand what's top of mind and who can really connect to your strategic goals in the most urgent way possible. So this is really, and if you get to the bottom, you can again see opportunities to click through on articles that help support exactly what you're working on. So we've really designed this to be interactive and connective, and really supplement all the different parts. The articles will supplement the work that you're doing and the questions that you're answering.
And then the idea is that you take these in sequence, right? And then we pass you on to the next lesson, right?
Exactly. And, like we said, I think it's ideal to start at strategy and move through evaluation, but you might need to pop right into one particular module based on whatever you're working on. But yes, that's one of that's the idea behind moving you through these modules.
Emmeline just got us. There is a World Wildlife Fund. We should know that since they're on the board of the Communications Network. We unfortunately goofed and called you the World Wildlife Federation, which
needs to be fixed.
Which needs to be fixed and shall be. Thank you for that, Emmeline. Maybe this is a good place, Tim, if you don't mind, we could just sort of prompt folks to ask questions here in the chat box. Just go ahead and type in a few questions that you may have. Or corrections if need be. And Robin is asking, can you save what you input in the fields and print it?
Yes. You have to create a profile, and then you can save your inputs and print them.
Right, and that's the cool thing, because then as you go through all the lessons, Robin, eventually you can kind of print out and almost make yourself your own little kind of notebook or 3-ring binder full of all of the answers that can serve as ideally serve not only you and the communications team maybe, but the kind of thing you can pass on to your colleagues elsewhere, and they can get a sense of these are our strategic goals, here's the audiences we're trying to serve, here, it'll give you a better kind of a personalized, if you will, sort of operating manual for your organization as you're doing your storytelling. That's the aim anyway. Samantha is asking, will this be available to ComNet members for free or for a subscription? Actually, Samantha, we're making it available to everybody for free, and that's thanks to the generosity of the Rockefeller Foundation. But our aim at the network is to evangelize how important communications are for achieving the impacts of all the great organizations that we serve. And so this is not something we want to put behind a firewall, and we're going to actually rely upon all of you to help us get the word out about this. So thank you, and you're welcome. Other questions? Can you please provide the web address? Yeah, sure, Joan. You can go to it by going to storytelling.comnetwork. That's COMNETWORK, all one word. Storytelling.comnetwork.org. And you can find that on Twitter, and it's up on the ComNetwork's website, but this resource will be around for a while. And Catherine, thrilled that you're going to be sharing it with your grantees. Our friend Catherine is down in Houston, where the Sahara Desert apparently is set to arrive over their heads in the form of a sandstorm, something like that. Wow. So she's going to have a story to tell probably by the end of this weekend. It's already here. Okay, even worse. Well, Catherine, stay inside. Tim, you want to take us through another couple of lessons, just sort of show us what we're going to see as people play here?
Yeah, why don't we drop into the content section? And this is probably what a lot of people think of when they think of storytelling, really the meat of it. What kinds of stories and what's going on here. But, there are questions you want to ask at this level, too, to make sure you're not just telling a story, but telling the right story and telling it well. So we have a few different lessons here. But if you scroll down a little bit, I want to point out a really important tool that's part of this section, and which we'll go into. You can pop into that second lesson, telling stories about impact. So this is a really important tool, and we'll talk. You can read about it here, and then we'll go into more depth in the content section or the content webinar later this year. But really, what we've done here is, as we were researching storytelling, and we really looked at storytelling in a broad way, and we spent some time with the work of Joseph Campbell, who many of you probably know from his mythic structure, The Hero's Journey. And so, he really looked at storytelling across cultures and across time, and found some really some recurring points in every story. And so he developed that hero's journey, and we've adapted it here to be the social impact story map. So if you're familiar with the hero's journey, you'll recognize that it follows that similar circular structure, and at each point, very important things are happening. And so, this is really, as we've begun sharing this with people, I think a lot of people find that it opens their eyes. It's like, okay, this is how you can tell a story, and you can take these traditional story structures and apply them to important things that we're trying to do as well. And there's an example in this module from the organization Charity Water, and how they we did not.
Should we scroll down here?
Yeah, you can scroll down and see this video. So we did not work with them on this video. This is something that we found already in existence, and it happened to fit in quite well with the story, the social impact story map. So you can go ahead and watch this, but it's really beautifully done and pretty simply too, and it follows that pattern of the problem arising and the eyes being open to a possible solution and all the way through. And I think what's really great about the way that this map has been designed, is that you can you can, again, drop in at any point that you think is important to highlight in the story that you're telling or the work that you're doing, and loop back around. Or you might start in one section, and you might not have a resolution yet, but you could still speak to that and say that that we're really still working to meet this goal. So it's very malleable, but it provides a really great structure for you to work with.
Maybe we should scroll down just a little bit, Tim, because we're showing people a little bit of that video, and of course it's wonderful. We'd encourage you to take a look at that when you have a little bit more time, but maybe just show people the prompts that we're helping folks tease out of them the information they probably have stuck in their heads in a way that'll help them structure the stories.
Totally, yeah. So we walk you through in the same way that we walk you through some really important questions. In the other lesson that we shared with you, we're doing the same thing here in terms of content too. And we're going to offer tips along the way, and then you can dig in further with these suggested articles in each section. So there's really a breadth of exploration to do here.
Okay, so a couple of questions, if we can pause here. Allison asks, will the content that we input, so if you were typing into these boxes here, will that be private until we decide to push it out to the public?
It's always private. It's only accessible to the person whose profile it is, and they can download it and print it, but there's no other way for us to access it or push it out.
I just made the format kind of reminds me a little bit of the Mad Libs, that we all did as kids, or maybe you still do if you live with kids, as I do. But the idea here is that these will be things that you'll use internally. These are not meant to kind of actually, at the end of this, it's a story machine, and at the end your story will be told. But you'll certainly have the pieces in place that'll help you weave it together.
Yep.
That's the idea, I think. Lori asks, this is a really good question. Assuming that you come to the tool with all of your ducks already in a row, about how long would it take to fill this out? How long would it take you to take all 4 pillars and each of the lessons inside them?
So when we usually do workshops around these, they are 4-hour workshops. So if you want to do it all at once, I would say it would take somewhere between 2 to 3 hours to complete. So it is a time investment, but it's a good one.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, and I don't know that we've talked about this before, but this is actually a really cool tool to do your own, and this is kind of just thinking out loud, guys, but to run your own workshops inside your organizations, where you could call these up on their own laptops, and you as the comms team or as a comms leader could take folks, your colleagues, through these processes so that they can actually get invested in building these things themselves. That was one of the ways we envisioned using it. Another question comes in from Gypsy, and she says, this is wonderful, but a lot of the examples seem to be focused on service. Does the platform include examples of policy advocacy?
Not much right now. We don't have too many, but if there's a demand for that, we can think about creating more content.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Gypsy, our friend David Nasser at the Brookings Institution wrote a wonderful piece in the last issue of of Change Agent, the storytelling issue of Change Agent. David has been deeply involved in creating a number of storytelling ventures inside of Brookings, which, as you all know, is a think tank. It's a policy shop. Among the things I would suggest maybe to look at as models are the Brookings essay, which is something that David developed, and he talks about that in Change Agent. But they've also started, interestingly, to make short films. And, of course, many of you probably heard that President Obama and Mrs. Obama are just done a development deal with Netflix. We don't quite know yet what that's going to yield, but they seem to be interested in getting into the storytelling business or filmmaking business, or both, as well. So exciting stuff there. Other questions you guys might have? Let's see. Samantha has a suggestion, which is I'm not much of a printer, and Samantha, neither am I. If there's a way to fill out this form and then have the option to send everything I wrote there to an email address, that would be so helpful. Do we allow people to email this stuff to them, or does it just sort of sit on the site and you can log in?
We used to, I think, at one point, and Tristan and I were just talking about it yesterday, that we might have that option, but we have to check with the developers if, we can add it and when we can, but it's on our minds.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Other questions from people? And while we do that, Tim, maybe you could take us back and take us through the last two pillars. Just show off the lessons real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can drop into engagement next. And, this section is really designed to help you think about once you have your content, how do you distribute it? And so there's this lesson here which will help guide you through selecting a platform, and we can click through so you can see some of the questions that it's prompting to help you match what you've created or what type of story you have with what your goals are and what type of audience you have. And this goes back to the question a little bit earlier about audience. So we're trying to help you, based on some information that we have, narrow down to the type of platform that might be right based on your audience and the content that you have. And in our webinar that we'll do later in the year, as we've been doing some other presentations about this platform, we've really seen a demand and a desire to learn to beef up the engagement section. And so we're doing a lot of work to fill that out, to help people really understand what content strategy is, what it means to have stories to tell and figure out how to put lots of different stories together, along with a distribution plan. So we're drawing on some practices from entertainment media and journalism and marketing to help develop a content strategy perspective that's really useful for folks in the network. So that'll be built into our engagement presentation later this year. So that's engagement, and then we can drop into evaluation quickly too. And you can see there's 2 articles in evaluation that are going to help you think through how to tie your organization's goals to the measurement of the consumption of the content. And really one of the big things to think here is to set KPIs, these key performance indicators, just like you do in other communications work. Set them to your content. So you might have a goal for a story to reach a certain number of people, or to be talked about by certain influencers or in certain communities, and you can track those things. And I think another 2 points I think is really important to make about evaluation today is that there's a lot of push or expectation to have so many views on every piece of content. First of all, that takes time. And we suggest a 40-60 rule, which is spend 40% of your time creating content and 60% really promoting it in various ways. And that just allows you to really target your efforts on making sure the stories are seen, instead of churning out a whole bunch of stories and not having any of them seen. So that's really important thing to know. And then also, we really live in a time where if you could get 1 million views on something, that's great. But that idea of finding some sort of viral sensation, that's really gone out the window because there's so much content out there. So it's really about making sure your content is as meaningful as it possibly can be and that you're getting it to the right audiences and that's making a difference for them. So those are just some quick things. And again, we go into greater detail in another presentation about evaluation. But yeah, those are the pillars and how you can start using them right away.
And Sean and I were just talking about adding more to this evaluation section because it's really important to measure the impact of your storytelling and to know how to improve it.
Yeah, and this is actually a place where I think I would put a question to you all who are on the webinar. If you would type into the group chat, how are you all evaluating your storytelling efforts? Because we know, and we're owning it right here, we're showing it to you on the screen, we don't have any lessons here yet. We will. We hope to. And we know, I know from a number of conversations I've had with a number of you, this is something you're thinking about too. But this is a place where I think we all are going to need to learn and work together to really glean what's ahead for us, because I know this is a question on many people's minds. Let's see. Alex is asking, is there content on the platform about promoting content and investing money to reach audiences? So do we have anything on here about organic versus paid?
We might. I'll have to go through and check. I know we were trying to get a piece on that, so it might exist, but I'm not sure yet. We definitely have a lot on how to develop organic content and how to promote it. I think we might not have something specifically on investing money yet.
Yeah, and I'm feeling like we do on comnetwork.org, so I don't mean to take you off this site, but we're all kissing cousins here. So if you look on comnetwork.org, Alex, and give that a search, I think if you typed in the term paid content or something like that, you might surface a thing or two. Tanya is asking, tell me again about the 4-hour workshops being offered. How does an org sign up for these? So the short answer is we already done 2. If you were in Los Angeles or you were in San Francisco, the team was out there and working with our ComNetwork local groups in those 2 cities. We hosted 2 events. We had 50 people each, and then we try to keep them fairly small. We've got one planned in Washington, D.C. in September, and I think we're trying to figure out what our other city is. I know there were some conversations about Chicago, maybe Miami, maybe New York. We're still sorting that out, folks. But our aim is to try to, insofar as we can, offer these workshops in cities where you want us. So if you're interested, let us know. We can't promise we'll do it, but particularly where there's a ComNetwork local group that's active, that makes it a lot easier to bring people in to lead these sessions. And Barbara is asking, is there anything on the site specific to print platforms, an oldie but a goodie?
Yeah, I think so. There might be a couple of articles that do talk about print platforms. You'll see that there aren't too many of those because one of the focuses of this site was digital storytelling, since that's where we're all headed. But yes, in the articles section, you'll find some that are about print platforms.
And I'll just offer up, Barbara, I'm sure you know this. It's one of the reasons that we made Change Agent as a print journal. The way you read online and the way you read when you're holding a printed piece are remarkably different. Like if you were to somehow manage to hold up your phone and a book, a real book, not a Kindle, and put your head inside of an MRI machine, what you would see is as you're reading, if we're talking about me, ESPN.com on your phone, and then you're reading Wuthering Heights as an actual book, if you looked at my brain, you would see different sections of my brain light up. And you'd also see, you've started to do those eye mapping things that they do when they're doing UX design for digital things. You skim and scan when you read in digital, right? So that's why images and headlines are so important, right? Because typically among 100 words, people typically pick up 4 words out of every 100 that they read when it's on a screen. And then remarkably, and maybe this will change for all of our kids or grandkids or what have you, but for now, we were all taught to read to completion. So when you're reading a printed piece, whether it's a memo or a book, you tend to, by and large, I think it's why it's so hard for so many of us to pick up that book that your friend recommended and it turns out you hate it. Putting it down is really hard because we've been taught to read to completion. So that's a big distinction between the digital and print pieces. If you want people to actually read it, give it to them in print, but help them find the time to do it. If you want them to see it, chances are digital is going to be the place to do it. Carrie is asking, is anyone using machine learning in storytelling to optimize messages to select audiences? I feel like the Washington Post is doing this right now, right? There's a bunch of efforts underway in the journalism space to start to bring AI to bear, right?
Yeah, haven't been doing too much research on this, but yes, there's journalism stuff that's going on in this.
And I would say if you want to see AI at work, just go on Twitter. A lot of those bots are literally. It's kind of horrifying. As a matter of fact, I'm being a little flip about this. There's a woman named Amy Webb who is a futurist. I feel like she's teaching now at Columbia's Business School. Anyway, if you were to Google Amy Webb, and maybe Yabby can pull up the site and post it on the network's Twitter page, but Amy has put, she's a futurist, and she's been talking a lot about AI and the future of journalism, the future of storytelling, and some of the things that are ahead. Perhaps you've seen a network newsletter. We shared a little bit about deep fakes. If you're not familiar with this, this is where computers can actually grab your voice. So right now, a computer can be grabbing my voice. And if they've got enough of a sample size, you could type in a sentence like, let's say, I love the New York Yankees, which is not true. Would make my father-in-law very happy to hear that. But you could actually get a computer who heard my voice and the intonations could reproduce my voice. And that's the kind of stuff AI is starting to do. So presumably developing stories is also there. So Amy Webb, the futurist, Google her. She'll probably have some resources for you. Okay, Catherine is asking, it would be fascinating to use American Aspirations survey questions to determine what version of a story to serve up to someone. Catherine, I think you just thread the needle. Tim, is that the idea?
Yeah, as we're moving forward through this this project, it's the idea is to sort of move through to a point where we can really have a sense of what types of stories people, certain audience segments want to hear, how to communicate certain messages in a way that they will be receptive. So what we're really talking about is tailoring content to audience personas, and that is something that we're getting into with the American Aspirations Project and understanding more about, using our audience segments and using message testing surveys to understand which messages really break through to different segments. So yeah, absolutely, that's certainly something that we're working on.
Great. Rachel asks, she loves the 40-60 rule. Are there tools and or guides in here for those of us who are still trying to figure out the best ways to collect stories? So that challenge we all have in the comm shop, which is someone's out in the field, they're doing extraordinary things, and we just wish that they would come back with a few pictures, have taken a few notes, maybe they've kept a journal, that sort of thing. They can share it back with us, and then we can take it and craft it into something and distribute it out. Do we have anything in there to sort of help people?
We do. We do have a few articles in there about that. We also, a little while ago, developed a small one-pager guide on how you can collect stories. We haven't published it here, but happy to share it out.
But we will. We'll agree to do that right now. So look for it in the next couple of days. Again, this site will get updated along the way. I want to be respectful and mindful of people's time. We're running close to the end of the hour. If you have a few final questions, happy to take a look at them and ask them of Tim and Kimaya. And just as a point of order for everybody, this is just meant to really kind of first give you a flavor of what you're going to find on this website. Obviously, it's going to reveal itself to you as you play with it and explore it. We do hope you will do that. And then we'll be back with a series of webinars that will do deeper dives, sort of the bigger strategic questions, the conceptual ideas around strategy and evaluation and content development, and that's to come, so hopefully you'll join us for those. Catherine is asking, program officers are out in the community hearing all the fascinating stories, but they may not have the time to collect them. So we will make a point of helping you figure it out. And just while folks are on the call, if this is something that's on your minds, one of the things that I discovered just a couple of years ago that has become one of my favorite tools on my phone, and I'm an iPhone user, is the Memo app, which normally you would not think of as something to make use of, but the voice memo, you can actually, if you show your program officers this is a great way for them to either take notes for themselves, right, or record a conversation or an interview out in the field, and then just you can literally easily email the MP3 back, and it's simple enough to get those things transcribed.
I use it all the time, and I'm starting to see a lot of people using it, and it's super simple.
I use it actually to prep for the conference. When I'm doing my opening remarks, I'll walk around and I'll kind of riff a few ideas and then take those and form them into something that I write down later. Emmeline is saying, voice memo is my lifesaver during interviews. That's a great one. And Tanya is saying, thank you for creating this. It's really wonderful, incredibly accessible. We hope so, and we want to make it even better. So obviously, please be in touch with us. We don't want this thing to just have a nice little splash, make you excited, but then you find that it's not useful to you. So if there's something you want or you need, by all means, let us know. And please, please feel like you are deputized from having joined us today to get the word out and help put this in front of other people, because we think it's really useful. Again, as Kimaya said, one of the things that we've noticed is that if you type storytelling into Google, you get a bazillion answers. And what we wanted to do is sort of try to begin to wrap our arms around some of the big ideas that we all need to know if we're in the business of doing communications for good. We tried to capture those here and also bring in some experience and reflections from people who are already doing this work, and to make it available to all of you and to your colleagues, importantly, to the folks who don't think of themselves maybe as the communications staff, to make it available to them in an easy, accessible way. So thank you very, very much. Perhaps we should leave it there, and we will come back and visit with you guys in fairly short order. If you didn't get a chance to sign up, you can go back. That email we sent you announcing Storytelling for Good had links to all of the upcoming webinars, and of course we'll send out invitations for those as they come up. For today, thank you, Kimaya. Thank you, Tim, very, very, very much. We're incredibly thrilled and honored to have your help with all of this, and grateful to the Rockefeller Foundation for their help. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.